morning, and welcome to A Brighter Morning with Bo. It's good to be with you this week. We enjoyed last week. We hope you did too. And this week is going to be a little different. We're going to have a number of things that we're going to try to do. This morning, our guests are Dr. Marjorie Thorpe and Mr. Krishna Samaru. Krishna Samaru is a poet and a teacher of literature, and Dr. Marjorie Thorpe has taught literature for many years. She's done many other careers. So we will talk with both of them. And our subject, though, is about literature and its value. I want to explain a little bit why we are doing that. As you know, there's a lot of emphasis today on science and technology. And on Wednesday, actually, I will talk with, or Thursday, I will talk with Professor Emeritus from the University of the West Indies, Dr. Professor Diana Reinsing, about science and technology. But the reason we're talking about literature today is because, first of all, tomorrow, if V.S. Naipaul were alive, would have been his birthday. So we're going to have tomorrow a discussion about Naipaul, and I'm going to show a video interview that I did with him and talk with one of the people at the University of the West Indies English Department of Literatures in English, Dr. Vijay Maharaj. And we're going to have a conversation about Naipaul. But I wanted to prepare the ground for that and also to engage the issue of how important literature is, or whether it is important at all. And the reason for that is that if you're interested in Naipaul, you read. If you're interested in books, you read. And the choices of study, although we live in a world of science and technology dominant, literature remains an important thing, and we'll talk about why. And I noticed from observation and also from conversations that the number of people doing literature at the University of the West Indies is falling. And I think in the secondary school system, students are not as enthusiastic anymore about doing literature. So I thought that we might have an engaging conversation with them on that. And we have two wonderful people who know what they are talking about to talk about these things. Before we get to them, though, and our first guest would be Dr. Thorpe, I want to mention some things that are important that is going on. COVID is still with us. And as the Prime Minister said, it's going to be with us here for some time. And all the experts are telling us that we are going to have to find a way of living with it and coping. The numbers are troubling still in Trinidad and Tobago, both the number of people who are infected and sick and the number of people who are dying. So we are concerned about that. We heard something too from one of the members of the opposition, the member for Couva North, I believe, indicated the issue of price increases. That is an issue that has been raised by Mr. Baliram Maharaj, who owns a supermarket in Arima and who used to be head of the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And that has also been raised by other people. But the important thing to remember about that is that all these prices are increasing because, one, the production system was interrupted by COVID, that is to say in agriculture and in manufacturing. And secondly, the entire transportation system, the international freight system, has also been interrupted by COVID and affected negatively. Some ports have had to close, and the whole logistics of transportation and freight transportation is a problem. And the third most important thing about that, from a human point of view, in terms of being the consumer, is that those prices are passed on to the consumer in every country, including our own, because once the cost rises, somebody has to bear that cost, and that cost generally isn't shared. Sometimes it's shared, but by and large, it's the consumer that pays the brunt of it. We've also had polls done in Trinidad and Tobago assessing the government's performance and Prime Minister's performance, and that was in the newspaper yesterday. Nigel, I forget his last name now, but he did a poll, a very reputable pollster, and basically he's talking about some of the challenges. COVID remains a dominant concern. People feel that the government has done well on COVID, but they are not doing so well now. And the other issues that are less dominant but no less important are crime and the economy. As we get the COVID under control, and we hope that we will, even if it is here with us, the issue of the economy and economic revival and economic sustainability, these things are going to become more and more important. And the Prime Minister himself, his popularity registers at 47% at this time. And the poll has indicated that this is 1 year after gaining office, and that is much lower than the Prime Minister's poll was in 2016, after he gained office in 2015, and much less than Kamala Prasad-Bissessar was in 2011, 1 year after she gained office. So we can talk about that as we read what's happening with the polls, and we hope we will get people on who can talk about those things as well. I don't want to ignore the regional and international events that are going on around us. We have a situation in Haiti where that country, I mean, what can you do for that country except pray and hope at this point? I mean, that country is living with political uncertainty. Its president was just assassinated. The whole political system is problematic because, you know, all you have is an elite really that runs that country, and the vast majority of people are poor. You had an earthquake which has caused havoc in the place. This is not the first one. Then you have a storm coming at it. We don't know what is going to happen. You have gangs in control of different parts of the country and basically in control of the routes. And of course, you have massive poverty. We have kind of persistent poverty that will not go away. And I mean, also the will of the world, I think, is under stress now to help Haiti. Everybody is caught up in COVID. Everybody is trying to get their economies to recover. And the appetite for basically looking after Haiti and its troubles is going to wane. And I think that that is something that we need to look at. Haiti is a CARICOM country, and we need to be alert and aware of what's happening there. Afghanistan, which has been a breeding ground for Al-Qaeda, saw first, you know, the Russians were there for nearly a decade before the Americans came, and the Americans were there for 2 decades. And that the election system was always suspect because you didn't have massive participation. The governments were always suspect because although they talked about Afghanistan as a country, you know that that is a country that is really made up of tribes. And we have seen, we have a troubling picture of the president leaving the country as the Taliban begins to take over the city, the capital, and the state buildings. And he has just gone about his business and left the country there to fend for itself and all the people. And Lord alone knows what is going to happen to that country. But the Taliban has taken power. They are now in charge of the country. Only the airport remains out of their control, and it doesn't seem that they want to go into battle over that, at least not yet. And the fallout from this will be refugees, of course. We've had a horrible situation of about 7.5 million refugees out of Syria, the biggest refugee crisis in the world. We have the second largest crisis in Venezuela, close to us here, and we are the recipients of a number of Venezuelan migrants in Trinidad and Tobago, and these are refugees, asylum seekers, basically displaced people. And now we've had the one, of course, in South Sudan as well, significant. And Afghanistan was always on the refugee, on a high list of refugee-creating countries, as was Myanmar after the crisis. But that is now going to escalate. And a lot of people have raised the issue of the condition of women under the Taliban. But we will explore these things as we go. Right now, we want to join Dr. Marjorie Thorpe on the phone, on the video, and we will talk to her a little bit about literature, but also about her career and her contribution to Trinidad and Tobago and the region. Good morning, Dr. Thorpe.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you here. Would you raise your volume a little bit? It's nice to see you this morning. And we'll have a little conversation, Dr. Thorpe, about all kinds of things. But let me begin by asking you about the various jobs that you've had and the fact that you have been, in my view, a significant contributor to Trinidad and Tobago and the region. But let the public, let the viewers, the listeners know some of the work that you have done and the various roles that you've played.
Well, thank you. I suppose my career began as an assistant lecturer in English at the University of the West Indies, the St. Augustine campus. And I was a member of faculty for some 20 years, after which I was appointed Trinidad and Tobago's ambassador to the United Nations in New York. When that term of office ended, I joined the UNDP system as Deputy Director of the United Nations Development Fund for Women, and ended as the UNDP's resident representative for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. And then I returned to Trinidad in 2000, served on various commissions, and retired in 2016.
Okay, I mean, that is a very significant career. And you've contributed at home, Trinidad and Tobago, as Basically, I think you've chaired several commissions, including the Police and the Public Service Commission. And you've also served abroad, and you've served the United Nations system in the region, always focused, of course, on the Caribbean, because that is your major interest. And that is a very, very significant career, significant contribution as well. But I want to ask you something. How did you do all of this, having studied literature and be a literature teacher? I mean, is there some connection that, let's say, the ordinary person will not understand?
Well, I think that I was able, to the extent that I was successful in these various roles, it was precisely because I had studied literature. Literature, well, I always enjoy the recounting of stories, and literature, after all, is an art form, like music, like dancing, like painting. So it draws you in because it entertains you and it is a source of pleasure. But I would say that almost imperceptibly initially, because everybody loves to have stories recounted, old people, young people, everybody, is that it tells you, or it helps you to understand what it means to be a human being. And in all my roles, I think that has been important, that has been valuable, because yes.
So your transfer, let's say, from literary study and consciousness and commitment to that would have taken you to the United Nations as an ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago. And basically you saw that as an intervention that had to do with people and the quality of life of people. And when you got into the gender issues with the UN, working for the UN, you saw that also as a people's issue having to do basically with women. And when you got into the regional thing with the OECS and so on, you saw that transference also in terms of, well, what can I do for the people I am now in a position to represent or do something for? Can you talk about that a little bit?
If I may, well, as I said initially, literature teaches us, it engages us, it entertains us, it's a source of pleasure, but as I was saying, as an art form, it helps us to understand what it means to be a human being. And in the process, it would make you conscious of the choices that you make, the impact of these choices on you and on other persons, and it and in the process, I suppose, helps you to build relationships that are helpful to the development, I suppose, of a better world. It sounds cliche.
No, it's not
but
cliched at all. I mean, literature is a humanist study. And,
precise.
you know, and to move from that to humanist concerns, humanitarian concerns, and to
Yes.
try to do things that are good for people.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a big stretch, but most people don't see it like that, you see. They see literature as a book or reading a poem and so on, and they don't make the connection. And for someone who is outside, I'm trying to help to make that connection for them so that they see what is involved. But you studied 17th century literature, English literature, And I mean, those things that you talk about, choices, the hard choices and so on, you would have done by studying, for instance, Paradise Lost, right? When
Yes, yes.
Paradise Lost would be about a hard choice.
Yes.
You would have studied Shakespeare with all his brilliant plays. But again, you know, much of literature is about the choices, the hard choices that people have to make. Huh?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think what literature and what it does is it shows you or it makes you reflect. It makes you reflect on the way you make these choices. As I was saying, the consequences of these choices. You see, the point is that the world is a small place and it is becoming increasingly smaller. And you have increasingly to treat with people who are different from you, who dress differently, speak differently, have different ideas, completely different ideas of how society should be managed. What? Because literature forces you or shows you the ways in which points of views differ, or it brings it home to you in an immediate way. I'm not saying that other areas of study or areas of knowledge don't do the same thing. It is, but the way in which literature does it, be it a poem, be it a play, be it a bit of prose fiction, the way in which it brings these conflicts, if you want, that are inescapable part of the human condition, the way in which it does this, it can have a profound effect on you. It can influence the because we talk of empathy all the time because it gives you the opportunity to stand in someone else's shoes.
Very
And
much
once you
so.
do that, you begin to understand that in spite of all our differences, we are bound together, as one philosopher says, by our common needs, or shared needs and our shared aspirations. Literature, because it engages you not only intellectually but emotionally.
Yes.
It is very effective in bringing home this message to you so that it allows you, and we have to, I mean, it has a very practical purpose. Maybe left to ourselves, we will just, if we were living individually in forests and the desert also, if you didn't have to interact with people, well, then it might be fine. You would just manage on your own. COVID has taught us, though, that we can never manage on our own. That what we do um, affects others, and what others do affects us.
Yes.
So I think it's the emotional, it's the ability to engage us emotionally, and because it addresses all areas of human experience. You pick up a book, and nine times it is almost certainly going to be exploring some aspect of human life, some aspect of human experience. And so
Yes.
it broadens your vision. It it stresses or oneness, what has been termed or inseparable humanity. And it allows you, because it encourages you or tries to persuade you to reflect on what it means to be human. It allows you, it lays the groundwork, if you like, for a better relationship at the level of the individual, at the community, at the society, and at the whole world order. I don't know.
Yeah,
Eh,
that is a wonderful reflection on literature and literary study and how it basically impacts on the individual student or individual citizen reading or trying to understand, etc. One thing that you said was striking, I think. You said, literature helps you to walk in the shoes of another person. And that is very important for empathy. It's very important for understanding diversity. It is very important for recognizing differences in point of view. It is very important for understanding the element of tolerance and restraint and trying to understand rather than be judgmental. And those things are very important things in the principle of citizenship and in the building of a democratic society and culture. And, one of the things I'm going to do, go ahead.
It's clear that you did literature too.
Sorry?
I'm saying, from what you just said, it is clear that you also were a student of literature.
Yes, of course, as you know. And I mean, everything I've done in my life has been really rooted in that sense of the value of literature in my own personal growth and evolution. One of the things that I'm going to do tomorrow, because tomorrow is supposed to be V.S. Naipaul's birthday, is that I'm going to have a discussion about that. But I have a video of an interview that I did with him in which he draws on Conrad, and he says every work of literature must be focused on some moral point. And that is the other thing about literature, which is that the ethical issues of living in a world with others and the moral issues of being a human being in a world with others becomes, almost paramount, Those are important considerations that I mean, if properly engaged and properly, what can I say, assimilated, become part of you in everything that you do. And I'm sure you carried it in all the jobs that you did,
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm sure that you did. But what would you say? I am learning now that students in secondary school don't like to do literature. They don't see it as a priority. And I learned the other day that at the Mona campus, for instance, in Jamaica, the enrollment for literature and literary study is about 20% of what it used to be before. And I know that there are challenges here at St. Augustine. I don't know what the situation is in Barbados. I haven't really checked. So there is, as we move in a world of technology and science, etc., people feel that literature is not important. What would you say if you had to tell a student why you might choose literature in the secondary school and why you don't want to avoid your what can I say, your opportunity to engage literature? And what would you say to young people who might want to study literature at university and who might be hesitant because they think it will not get them a job or it wouldn't give them a skill?
Yeah. Well, I think we both suggested the practical value of literature. And perhaps it is because we are very focused and we're encouraging our children to be focused on achieving an improved standard of living. And as far as they are concerned, that is the main value of going to university. It is to improve your standard of living. Now, and you improve your standard of living by getting, I suppose, by engaging in a skill or engaging in a profession that, while it serves people, is going to help you in material too. Now, the talk is about, and in development, improving the standard of living of a country, of a society, and the emphasis is on GDP, etc. But economists even agree, I think, that while economic growth, while material success is valuable and is critical, it isn't the end of what it means. It isn't the end of, say, of the development exercise. And it is proven that I don't just think it's just trying to be good, that no amount of material success will keep you safe if you are not concerned about your standard, what I'd call your standard of being. And not only your standard of being, but the standard of being of the people who live around you. I mean, you get to have a big house, you can do all sorts of things, and then you have to put on burglar proof. You're afraid all the time because you have not seen, or you have not internalized what literature emphasizes, that you are not alone, and that you cannot really live a fulfilled and satisfying life without concerning yourselves with immediately with the people around you. I think I'm being repetitive, but I think that is the value, because unless you learn to do that, and unless you choose to do that, and unless you make, as you were saying, the ethical and moral dimensions of life a part of your being, then you know you 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 can't survive, and particularly in this closely interwoven life, the way in which we live on this planet. And so that I think you are taught these things. And someone said that the lies of fiction, because literature doesn't pretend, and certainly works of fiction don't pretend to be historical fact. But say the lies of fiction, because the way in which they are communicated can have a greater influence and be more effective than any assemblage of facts. It is the emotional power, I think, of works of literature that allow you that engage you not only intellectually but emotionally, and that allow you to survive, because you can't survive alone. That is what COVID has taught us, that no matter what we do, we cannot survive unless everybody is helped.
Exactly.
The issue, yes, yes,
Okay, no, but that combination of intellect and emotion in literature is really critical. You have the intellect of the writer at work, and you have the emotions that the characters that he creates, or she
yes,
creates.
yes.
Basically working on your sensibility as a reader, as someone who is looking on at a play or whatever. Now, Marjorie, I'm going to take a break at this point, but I want to ask you a question to reflect on. What do you think is happening in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago society now? Are there things that we should worry about? And the reason I'm taking a break is because the sunlight is coming through your window and, and creating a glare here. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to pull the curtain and reflect on the question when I come back, okay? All right, we're going to take a break now.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionst.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
Welcome back. Okay, you got it now. Yeah, that's better. You see, I had the same problem. I had Professor Clayton from Mona, and I was talking with him, and he had such a fascinating conversation with me because he was talking about cities of the future. But the light coming through the window was so fierce that I even got on my WhatsApp somebody telling me if I could do something about the light. So thank you for helping me with that. So the question, what's the question? All right, what do you think is happening in Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago society today? And are there things that we might be concerned about, that we might worry about from your point of view?
You know, all over, and it will in a way be a repetition of what I said already. Every country,
It's not a
the big thing
repetition, it's
is
a reinforcement. It's a
Well,
reinforcement
okay.
because it's your ideas. I want your ideas to come through, you know?
Everybody's talking about sustainable development.
Yeah.
What is meant by development, and we were saying earlier, it meant getting, or what is perceived as development is improving your standard of living. Now, so one of the issues, and maybe that was the issue we discussed earlier, is that is not to the extent that we do not let our people or children know that that development would never be sustainable unless it addresses our relationships with others, be it the poor, be it the women, be it and in the environment as well. It can't be sustainable. So that the first thing is we have to make the importance of acting in a moral and ethical way in all our relationships a matter of urgency. That's the first thing. The other problem that we seem to, or we talk about, is the internal conflict in living in maybe a diverse society. I think Trinidad has done excellently in that respect. People are just human, but because we're back at the same issue, because we have been able to accept, respect, or various cultures or various points of view. So that is the other thing. And the importance, the challenges I think we face are how to be better human beings, and in the course of that, because it always comes down, I think, to what it is to be a human being and what choices you make that can make the world a place where it's self-interest, where you can live comfortably, and because life's challenges, loss, pain, betrayal, all of these are part of all our experiences. And we are challenged all the time to deal with these sources of pain and loss and betrayal, etc. We are still striving for to live satisfied and fulfilled lives. Lives that, when I talk about a fulfilled life, a life where, despite all the challenges we face, despite all the challenges that are what we say part of the human condition, we can still emerge satisfied and even happy, perhaps, despite all the frustrations and disappointments that are part of being human. So it is the cultural. I don't think Trinidad and Tobago has. I think we are very tolerant. I think we are tolerant. So maybe in the end, the greatest problem is not not seeing development as an end in itself, not seeing economic growth as an end in itself. It is of paramount importance, it is of paramount value. We cannot have better lives if we do not have certain material comforts, etc. But at the same time, we have to understand that as human beings, we and people everywhere require more. I mean, it has been said that development is an attempt to enlarge our choices, to um, let us have an improved sense of identity, self-reliance, self-respect. These are perhaps the areas in which we are lacking, and which I believe we can be more sensitive to, and we can, if I want to talk, redeem ourselves.
Yes.
Help. Literature doesn't do it on its own at all, but it certainly would help us to change our attitude, to examine our own lives, to be more, just what you said earlier, more understanding and have empathy for others. And in that way, we are more likely able, I suppose, to work together and to produce a way of life, to produce a world, a society, a community that is more evenly, that is more, more capable of affording us all, allowing us all to live, as I said, fulfilled lives.
Yeah,
I,
well, you know, you you've raised an important point about GDP and the material necessities uh, of support to have a quality life or a decent life. And we didn't talk about this, but I mean, you and I know that science and technology is almost driving, it's not almost, but it is driving everything now. So the science and technology and the innovation that comes with it, those things are critical. The material comforts are critical. But I think the dimension that you are adding, coming as you are from looking at the world through the UN's eyes as a Trinidad and Tobago citizen and representative, looking at the region as a UNDP resident rep, and seeing the challenges there, trying to make sense of it in terms of economic discourse. And having studied literature, I think what you are seeing is really, look, if you don't bring a humanist and humanitarian perspective to this, and if you don't understand at the end of the day, it is the happiness of people that we are talking about, it will all come to naught.
absolutely.
You know, let me just, we're going to have to shift now because I'm going to have to go on to the news. But I want to ask you a closing question. You are retired now, you've given a full life to the Trinidad and Tobago and the region and to public service, right? Is literature still a comfort to you now? And I know that you taught and you studied 17th century literature, but I also know that you have been very engaged personally in trying to understand what our writers and our poets are talking about in terms of the contemporary Caribbean, really. So tell me something about the comfort that literature has given you and what you have seen in any West Indian writer or book or poem that you would like to leave with the viewing and listening public.
Oh, that's a hardish one. That's a little difficult. It is certainly, well, as I kept saying, it is a source of entertainment, but it is also, in my retirement, I continue to read. Well, it's a source of pleasure,
Exactly.
and it is, and I don't think one ever stops growing. I don't think one ever stops being challenged. And for me, then, it is a source of comfort to see how others have met the challenges that I face, and also the way in which the way in which they express these challenges, how it's their expression of these challenges, just express so perfectly what I feel, but I could not
You could do
articulate
it
it in
yourself,
those
yes.
words.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So it continues to be a source of comfort and pleasure and interest and delight, or all of those. Now, the other question was one book
No, I was saying,
or
I'm saying,
poem.
no, more than, I was really talking about your connection with West Indian literature as a West Indian growing up. All right. So
Yes.
I was thinking if you could reflect on just one book or one poem that has made a difference to you in the contemporary period, within the last 30, 40 years. You don't have to if you don't want to do it. Is there
Yes.
anything
Well, you see,
that
I don't think that there's any one book or one poem. Very much in West Indian. One of the last books I read was Lawrence Scott's A Dangerous Freedom.
yes.
It it I think its importance, though it is set in during before the abolition of slavery, and but the consequences are still very much with us. So that to the extent that it explores what it means to be dispossessed from one point of view, from in one area, what it means to be dispossessed and subjugated, and on the other hand, what it means to be why people act in certain ways, how they justify their actions, and what it means to be in power, and how you use that power, because it is still happening today. The divisions in this society are very much with us. Still, race. I mean, as there's a Barbadian young lady I know who tells, it's not only racism, it's shadism as well,
Yeah.
and cultural differences, etc. So I don't know if that quite
Well,
answers what
no,
you
no.
say.
Well, I just wanted you to share something from your own recent experience of reading. That's all.
Yes.
But we're going
And
to
I
have to
think that,
close now. I want to thank you for a wonderful engagement. I think that you were a little nervous at first, but I think you relaxed as we conversed. And you know so much about this, Marjorie, and it's really wonderful to talk with you. And I'm happy that listeners on U97.5 FM and MCTV viewing got a chance to see and hear you. Thank you very much for coming. We move on
and I
now
thank you so much.
to the 7 o'clock news with Andrew Chan.